Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Kirby. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Smartling. Up next, I want to introduce Yasmin Bart and Maya Milsajevic from SumUp. They're going to walk us through their exact framework and workflows their team built to embed AI across their localization operation. Yasmin and Maya, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so glad to have you here. I'll pass the mic over to you both to share your expertise. Again, thank you so much.
Hi, everyone, and thanks a lot for joining our session today. My name is Yasmin Bart, and I'm a Senior Localization Manager at SumUp.
Hi, everyone, and my name is Maya Milosavljevic, and I am a Localization Manager at SumUp, and I'm really glad to be here today. Together with my colleague Yasmin, we are going to share some very practical lessons from scaling AI-powered localization, what worked, what didn't work, and how to build workflows that actually deliver impact. And I promise we will keep it real, so no perfect stories, just an honest version. Before we get into our AI journey, let me give you a quick picture of who we are, for anyone who doesn't know SumUp. SumUp provides payment solutions, business accounts, and financial tools that help small businesses start, run, and grow. Today, we have more than 4 million users, and we operate across 38 markets on 4 continents. Our localization team sits right at the heart of this global operation. We make sure that every product and communication feels local, accessible, culturally relevant, and on brand. We deliver content across 47 locals, and last year alone, we localized more than 18 million words. Which, yes, that's a lot of words and more than most people read in a lifetime. And as SumUp kept growing, localization had to evolve too. So we couldn't just do more at the same, we had to rethink how we work, and that's where AI came in. When we first started exploring AI in localization, our journey looked very similar to many other teams in the industry. It began with neural machine translation. But our broader goal was already clear. With the exploration, we wanted to better enable the business scaling. So we wanted to enable faster go-to-market timelines, reducing costs, and at the same time, ensuring the quality remained uncompromised. The operating model had to scale with the business growth. Several years ago, we saw a real opportunity. And what gave us confidence was that we were better positioned to leverage AI because the localization industry already had a strong foundation. So we started thinking about the content type that would be the most suitable for our exploration. We defined that it should be a low-risk, high-volume content, the kind where scalability mattered the most. And that led us to our first machine translation content, Help Center. We focused on small amount of languages and to keep things control, and we worked closely with Smartling to curate high-quality training data. And this involved cleaning data, aligning terminology, but also training custom engines tailored to our needs. So tailored to our domain and tone of voice. For evaluation, we brought in some of the most experienced linguists, and their role was essential because we wanted more than just a technical validation. We wanted to understand the real linguistic quality and what the experience actually felt like for users. At this stage, we had two simple but very important questions. Where did trained NMT perform well? And where did it struggle? Those early learnings became the foundation for everything we built next. The pilot gave us confidence to move. Together with Smartling, we rolled out machine translation post-editing workflows across all supported languages. Turnaround times were cut in half and costs came down too. So that was a real win. But as adoption grew, we started noticing the gaps. Linguists were still reporting and they were still spending a lot of time on fixing some recurring issues, such as formatting, punctuation, dates, numbers, and also linguistic conventions. And the amount of time needed for editing the output varied depending on the languages. And even though this was one of the most advanced solutions on the market at that time, it wasn't fully meeting our needs. So we started asking ourselves, how can we minimize repetitive manual work and make the experience smoother for our linguists? And that question opened a door we definitely didn't expect. This became one of the most important turning points for our team. During a SumUp Hack Week, a group of localization and AI enthusiasts came together. So we dragged our engineers all the way to Albania to participate in a SumUp hackathon, not because anyone asked us to, but because we believed the market wasn't giving us what we needed. So this was a true bottom-up initiative and with pure curiosity and only pure experimentation. So with LLMs evolving so fast, we started wondering, could we improve machine translation output before it reached linguists? So we built an in-house MVP solution, and it showed very promising results. The workflow was roughly this. We would take the output from Smartling, then we would process it through a data layer and applied an LLM-based enhancement on top. So the tool combined rule-based engine, a prompt-based AI workflow, and also all automated quality scoring on top. But the solution had its limits. Language coverage was narrow, maintenance was complex, and also building this in-house at our scale just wasn't sustainable long-term. But at the same time, the industry was moving fast. And thanks to our partnership with Smartling and their real openness to user needs, we decided to explore the next generation of solutions. And this is how we think about AI today. So we started exploring some more advanced AI native workflows, to be specific, AIT and Toolkit, solutions that combine NMT and LLM capabilities. And what they made this particularly powerful for us was the level of customization. So we could generate the output that reflects SumUp's terminology, tone, and style. We could also combine multiple AI capabilities into hybrid workflows, and we could tailor solutions for different content types and audiences. And this improved quality gave us confidence to expand AI workflows beyond help center content into product, CRM, and also performance marketing. Linguists were reporting fewer issues, speed improved, and that gave us the confidence to scale even more aggressively. But here is the biggest lesson we took from all of this. AI performs significantly better when it's not treated as a one-size-fits-all solution. So different content types require different quality expectations, different speed, and different workflows. So we stopped thinking about AI as a replacement model, and we started thinking about it as a tool that supports our processes. And also we started asking ourselves, where is AI strong and where does human input still matter? So AI is great at handling first drafts, repetitive production tasks, and also workflow routing. But human expertise is still essential for cultural validation, brand voice, strategic decisions, and continuous improvement of the system itself. So the best result comes from combining both. And this mindset shift changed how we designed localization at SumUp. So historically, there was one workflow for everything, and now content type is at the center of the model. So what you see on this slide is the three layers that are working together. So we have the language models on the left. So we have both single models and also hybrid models. Then we have different AI profiles for different content types. And then on the right, we have data sets and knowledge which are tailored to different audiences. So each AI profile draws on a different combination of models and data, and we can plug in and pull different solutions depending on what the content needs. So instead of forcing everything into one workflow, the system adapts based on the content, based on the business needs, and also based on the different audience. And this is what is making our localization team a core growth pillar at SumUp, while at the same time ensuring it's in lockstep with product deliveries.
And while introducing AI into our translation workflows was a massive help already, as Maya just shared with us, AI in the linguistic sense alone did not solve our scalability challenge. Because in a fast-growing company like SumUp, our real challenge wasn't translation, it was scale. We had to look at our localization system more holistically and explore the role of automation. So we expanded our approach. We weren't solely automating translation anymore. We were automating decision logic, which meant that we mapped and categorized all content types and looked at what gets translated and when, and by which workflow, and with how much human involvement. AI plays an important role in all of this, but adopting it blindly without the operational thinking behind it was not the solution. And this mindset helped us shift from a more operational to a more orchestrated model, meaning that our workflows and the system itself are custom designed for our specific needs. We defined guiding principles as our decision framework behind every new initiative, and they inform how we design our system today. Underneath these principles sits a broader content matrix, which helps us determine the workflow type, the automation level, the review depth, and the human involvement. And all of this is based on factors like the visibility, the business impact, risk and sensitivity, creativity required, and the volume and frequency. And of course, different content types require different operational models. So based on these criteria, we define the principles that you can see on screen here. So not every content is treated equally, and the risk defines the depth of review. We automate by default where it is safe, and we apply human expertise where it adds the most value, and we optimize for scalability. Before we introduce any new automation process, the question is always, what is the visibility of the content we want to route through that new process? And what is the risk? And what is the impact if it goes wrong? And what level of adaptation is required? This is the framework that guides our decisions. And this is what determines the whole workflow design. And here is where that framework got its biggest test. So we are 8 people on the localization team, and we're supporting 200 engineers across 26 offices globally. The process friction and the scaling pressures that you can see on screen here weren't hypothetical, they were very much our reality. Because at SumUp, product and engineering teams continuously launch new features, they improve existing experiences, and expand the product offering across all markets. What that means in practice for localization is a constant flow of high volume UI strings, frequent product updates, and lots of Jira requests every single day. And we were doing this on top of managing whole business line programs. So all this ticket work was blocking our most strategic work. Because for us, the product localization process implied lots of manual and very time-consuming coordination. And engineers were very much dependent on us to move releases forward, which meant that releases increasingly dependent on that process coordination rather than the actual product readiness. At the same time, product complexity and release velocity continued to increase, while our team size didn't grow. The process simply couldn't keep up with product development anymore. So we knew that something had to change. And to understand why this became such a bottleneck, let me show you what the process actually looked like in practice. So this was our old operational model. So engineers worked in GitHub with a custom script enabling manual push and pull of keys between GitHub and Smartling. But despite that level of technical integration, the workflow itself was still very manual. So an engineer would push keys, create a Jira ticket, and wait for localization to take over. From there, the localization team managed the entire process manually. So by creating translation jobs in Smartling, preparing linguistic briefs, we would trigger AI translations, then take care of the linguist assignment, monitor the entire progress, handle the QA afterwards, and then finally hand back the localized strings to engineering. So all of this meant high manual effort on our side. And for the engineer, it meant they had to wait for the process to finish to be able to move forward with the release. And in some cases, it meant delays because if there was a queue of tickets and if strings were localized or not localized in time, That meant missing release cutoffs. So engineers had to wait for the next release cycle. As you can see, the old model introduced delays, dependency, and a lot of coordination effort overall. Our goal wasn't simply to automate this process, but to achieve operational autonomy. We wanted to enable product and engineering teams to move faster, experiment more freely, and ship globally without localization becoming a bottleneck, while we still wanted to, of course, keep quality in the loop. And the localization team was spending most of their time coordinating workflows, working on tickets, rather than focusing on areas where our expertise created the most value. So solving this required much more than just a simple workflow tweak. It required rebuilding the entire infrastructure. So we introduced a new connector-based setup using the Smartling repository connector. And we designed a completely new project architecture within our Smartling space. And then we migrated existing strings across both web and mobile domains. At the same time, we redesigned the workflow itself. So we were shifting from a very manual workflow to a far more embedded and automated model. And beyond the technical implementation, there was also a major organizational component to this transformation. So it meant aligning engineering stakeholders, onboarding teams into the new process, and supporting adoption across multiple domains and product teams. So this wasn't a quick rollout. This required months of cross-functional collaboration between localization and engineering to redesign how product localization operated at scale. What became clear was that this operational transformation was only made possible by a complete transformation of the infrastructure itself. And this ultimately became the foundation of our new product localization model, internally known as GitHub Logflow. At the center of the setup is the Smartling repository connector, which monitors our GitHub repositories for changes to the resource files. And this is where the workflow fundamentally changed. There are no Jira tickets, no manual handovers, and no dependency on localization to initiate the process. As soon as engineers create a pull request or commit changes, the connector automatically detects the updated strings and then transfers them into Smartling. And within Smartling, we've built an hourly automation that groups newly added strings into translation jobs and automatically triggers the localization workflow. So within minutes, initial AI translations are returned directly back to GitHub, making them immediately available to engineering teams. And here's the bigger shift. So human review and our localization QA now happen asynchronously and post-release rather than blocking the deployment cycle itself. Once human review is completed, the validated translations, they override the initial AI translations directly in GitHub, allowing us to balance the need for speed with quality control. Which means engineers no longer have to wait for the full localization cycle before releasing product updates globally. And this is especially handy in cases of urgent updates and releases. But in cases that are more impactful, for example, new onboarding flows, engineers tend to wait for the full cycle to be completed first. And with this process, transformation, we achieved some very real outcomes. So today, roughly 75% of our UI content is automated across 68 web and mobile domains. We've onboarded 27 engineering teams on the new process. And the biggest operational shift is what previously took days of coordination and waiting now takes roughly 1 hour from key creation to initial AI translation availability. By using an AI-forward workflow, we reduce linguist workload by roughly 50%. And what had a massive impact on our team was that the manual handovers between engineering and localization decreased by around 60%. With GitHub Logflow, we achieved a fundamental shift. So engineers no longer have to wait on localization to continue shipping product updates globally. That dependency was effectively removed. And internally, this allowed the localization team to move away from constant coordination and this constant ticket work. So we were able to focus more on quality oversight, the workflow orchestration, the system improvement, and other higher impact strategic programs across the business. So that was our product story. Now let's zoom out and see what changed on a more broader level. So the biggest shift wasn't just our tech setup. It was how localization itself evolved inside the organization. The role of localization shifted from managing translations to designing scalable systems and operational models. And that transformation happened across several dimensions. So operationally, we significantly reduced repetitive manual work and created more space for higher impact initiatives. Strategically, localization became more embedded in go-to-market conversations and product planning rather than operating purely downstream. At the team level, the required skill sets also evolved, moving away from primarily project coordination toward workflow design and product thinking and also AI oversight. And structurally, we now had a repeatable framework for making automation and workflow decisions. But if we're fully transparent, not everything worked that we tried. So after the success of GitHub Logflow, we started expanding automation into other content areas, particularly marketing production flows. But this quickly became a very different challenge due to the complex and creative nature of marketing content, with it being more nuanced and in many cases having strict character limits that impact creativity. For performance marketing, we experimented with a fully self-serve AI-driven workflow for ad localization. However, this fully automated flow didn't perform well. Reasons were the character limits and the level of nuance required, so human intervention was necessary. What did work well was a partially self-serve model, so AI-generated drafts combined with a lightweight human review, and that ultimately became the operating model. We saw a very similar pattern in CRM workflows. So low-risk lifecycle emails could operate fully self-serve, while higher visibility or more sensitive customer communications still require human review and approval. So GitHub Logflow taught us where aggressive automation could work. Paid marketing and CRM taught us where orchestration and selective human oversight still mattered. And in many cases, the experiments that don't fully scale are the ones that teach us the most, because they show us where different workflows or review models or human oversight are still needed, and maybe even where AI simply isn't quite there yet. And here's what all of this added up to across the whole program. So today, 100% of our supported languages are powered by custom AI models. Roughly 70% of all localized content moves through AI-supported workflows. And in product localization specifically, we reduced the time to initial AI translation availability by roughly 99%, which represents a fundamental change. And on top of that, with adjusted automation approaches, we also achieved reductions of up to 70% in localization turnaround time in areas like paid marketing and CRM. And what makes these results truly meaningful, these weren't isolated improvements in just one workflow. They reflect a much broader operational shift across different content types and channels throughout the organization. So last year, much of our focus was on building the automation layer itself with, reducing manual dependencies and increasing the speed. But the focus is beginning to shift. Today, the question is no longer just how do we automate faster or what can we automate? It's more about how do we make these systems now even more smart and more contextual, and how can we achieve an even higher quality at scale? And this is what we're focused on this year. So we will be exploring more ways to increase the quality on AI level, but also introduce more quality measurements and also more monitoring capabilities. So we've already achieved the core foundation that now allows for this next phase. And before we close the session, here's what we share with anyone starting out where we started. So one of the biggest lessons from our journey is that scalable localization is not created by AI alone. Instead, it's created by choosing the right automation model for the right type of content in operational context. And it's created through intentional system design, the workflows, the decision frameworks, the governance models, and the way localization is embedded into the organization itself. Because growth naturally increases both volume and operational complexity, and that's not slowing down. If anything, that's accelerating. AI absolutely increases speed and capability. But those gains only become sustainable when the surrounding system is designed to support them properly. And I think that's the most important shift. Localization teams are no longer just managing translation workflows. They are increasingly designing the systems that enable global scalability. And also the good news is you don't need the perfect setup from day one, because we certainly didn't have it. So what we would say is start small, don't be afraid of failing or even breaking things, and learn continuously and gradually redesign the system over time. Because ultimately, scalable localization is not built through one big AI initiative. It's built through continuous operational evolution. And with that, thank you very much for listening to us today.